Okay, I think we should get started now. It's already 2 minutes past five, and I'm sure people will keep on joining in. So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody, depending on wherever you are. It's an exciting topic that we bring to you today from Benori in our next knowledge series. Just some housekeeping points. As you are joining in, it'll be great if you can type out your name and your organization in the chat window so that we know who you are. Second, as we are going along, please do type out your questions again in the Q&A window, preferably. Uh, Thirdly, towards the end of the webinar, when you are exiting the webinar, a feedback form would come up. So please do fill that out. It will only make us become better. So as I said, welcome again. The exciting topic today, it's related to the FMCG industry. And the title of the webinar today is Accelerate or Fall Behind, the new reality of FMCG launch cycles. Along with me in the webinar today is Dr. Priyal Bisht, my senior colleague. Uh, Priyal comes with about 25 years of work experience, and he is an expert in the consumer and chemicals industries as such. Also especially from the innovation and the new product development and the new product launch point of view. So, Priyal, welcome here.
Thank you,
What
Ashish.
what we have done is we have another 41 minutes left as such. So first, I would present for about 12, 14 minutes. And this is really about what is happening in the product launches space within the FMCG industry as we talk about that topic today. So various forces at work, various trends that we are seeing, how are things changing, and so on. After that, I will hand it over to Priyal, and he will maybe spend another 15 minutes or so talking about how does one actually achieve this accelerated product launch, and what does it take to become more competitive, become better in terms of execution. And this is where we will also talk about some of the aspects of Benori and how we are helping our clients in delivering against this. And towards the last 10, 15 minutes, depending on the questions that come up, I would pick up some questions, and I would also request Priyal to answer some of these questions as such. And as we are going along, as people are joining, request again, please do type out your name and your organization in the chat window. Okay, with that, let's get into it. So, talking about product launches as such, um, did you know that on an annual basis last year, there were more than 85,000 products that were launched in the world? And when we say FMCG, we are really limiting this to three segments of the market. One is food and beverage, second is personal care, and the third is home care. So within these three categories across the world, we had about 85,000 products, new product launches last year. The interesting part is that only 35%, or roughly one third of this, were new products, and two-thirds of this was what is called renovated products, which means that those products already existed, and companies who own those products felt a strong market need to modify or to renovate that existing product in some ways. What is also very interesting to note is that to do a new product launch, whether it's really a new innovation or it's a renovation, there's a huge range of amount of money which needs to be spent. right from $10,000 right up to $10 million. And this is really a when we were doing our research, this came out as a bolt from the blue to us, that almost 80% of the products that are launched fail in the first 18 months. And if you carry on with that half life, every 18 months, the remaining 20% would come down to 10% surviving. And finally, when the whole uh, analysis has matured, you would find that only 5% of all products that are launched survive. So really the need of the hour is to develop smart products. Impact-driven innovation needs to be implemented to stay competitive. So this is the product launch process. I don't need to tell anybody here, how this works. But basically, there is need assessment, there is the development of the product, there's the whole go-to-market strategy. The product is launched, and afterwards, you keep on monitoring and me keep on having a feedback loop back into the strategy for that particular product. So on the innovation side, innovation is right from end to end. Renovation is obviously from the product development till the end side. If you look on the innovation side, there's an example from Unilever where their Sunlight BioCare Nature product was powered by patented RamoClean technology. So this was a real innovation. But if you look on the renovation side, Nestle, uh, because of consumer activism in some sense or consumer feedback, they had to renovate their Cerelac product by having no refined sugar in it. So what has been the evolution of the product launch process as such? And what we did here was look at the value chain of product launches, and then looked at four time periods. One is before 1980s. The second is a 30-year period between 1980 to 2010, then 2010 till 2020, and then 2020 till today. Just a quick reminder, as we are going through this, please do keep on writing out your questions in the Q&A window. Now, what was, I'll just pick up some few critical points here. Um, the first interesting part is that in every period, you see that the product launch time is getting crunched. So it used to be 45 years back, used to be 2 or more years. 35 years back, from 80 to 2010, became 18 to 24 months, then 12 to 18 months, then 6 to 12 months now. So is this headed towards 1 month, 2 month, 3 months? Nobody knows. But the fact of the matter is that there is definitely some kind of a modified Moore's law in place here, right? So you need to accelerate as a company, as a inventor, also as a scientist. You need to accelerate the product development part. um, the need assessment idea generation has gone from having internal quick dipstick market research right up to predictive trend spotting, which means that through an influencing process and through a predictive process, you can actually predict what consumers might need in the future. Similarly, on the product development side, it has been from a good old lab-based manual sequential R&D processes, which were very lengthy and cumbersome, through automation, through digital tools. Now you have very, very advanced AI tools to do the R&D part of it. The go to market, again, the same digital evolution has happened from mass media to more and more segmentation to big data. And then finally, now you are almost getting to the segment of one kind of a situation where these products can be customized, can be personalized, and the marketing strategy can be tailored towards very specific niches of the market as well. And of course, there are very interesting trends on the product launch itself, but post-launch monitoring, and if you look at 2020 till now and what's happening now, you can actually get real-time feedback from the market on an ongoing basis, which can help you in making the launch better. So if you really look at the ecosystem of product launch, of course, at the center is all of you, and on the surrounding side, the ecosystem. Maybe there are some people who are present on the webinar today, but the FMCG players, people who produce these products and sell them to their customers, are in the center, and they are being impacted. The launch ecosystem is their suppliers, ingredients, equipment, packaging, regulatory frameworks, regulatory evolution that's impacting the way large and small and new age FMCG companies launch their products. Definitely, technology has a big disruptive role to play. And finally, on the consumer side, demand side, whether it's how potentially brand loyalty is going down, personalization is increasing across generations, the nuances and the requirements are changing dramatically, evolving dramatically, and this whole notion of premiumization. So I'll just maybe spend another few minutes and quickly cover some of the key aspects of each one of those players and participants in the ecosystem. So when it comes to established regional players, and this I'm talking about the core, the center part of that chart, the earlier chart, more and more rigor is there in the need assessment, market assessment, concept development, um, more focus on science. You see science education in the world, STEM education in the world that's going through the roof. That is because there are more and more science-based innovations that are being demanded by customers. And of course, the whole thing about being more competitive and so on. New age players, this is a lot of this is being driven by VC money. So they have a more risk-taking culture. They also have flatter organizational structures. The whole concept of MVPs has come out very strongly in the FMCG space as well. Niche targeting, niche personalization, and then essentially there being more rapidity in execution because the organizational structures are flatter and there is a smaller number of people who are taking these decisions. So on the supplier side, how that is impacting, the larger players are still getting into these, I won't call it anymore buyer-seller relationships. These are more strategic partnerships. So here is an example of Dow and P&G, where, in this particular example of recycling, Dow actually gained access to P&G's deep expertise, and P&G obviously got access to patented recycling technologies at Dow. So this was really a strategic partnership. However, with newer players who might be smaller also, they still would need to continue in that traditional, more buyer seller kind of dynamics where the whole Porter forces will come into play and negotiating power would come into play. Now, this actually is the crux and a very important determinant of product launches. You look at consumer behavior, how it is changing. Clearly, there is brand loyalty which is getting diluted. So, in our research, we came across a report which suggested 57% of consumers switched to a competitor that better met their needs. Similarly, across generations, the nuances are different. Gen Z generation makes 4 times more online purchases and through social media as well. And then this whole notion of rapid customization, which is required. Now, the regulatory frameworks, regulatory environments, complexity has just gone through the roof and for very good reasons. There are stricter safety and quality standards which are required. Packaging has to have warning labels which are clearer. The ingredients break down the exact percentages on the claims that are being made. So European Chemicals Agency found 6% of hazardous substances in cosmetic products, for example. And then, of course, labeling, ingredient transparency, and things like those. And as the world becomes more and more global, as markets for FMCG companies become more global, Inter-country trade is again going through the roof, and sometimes it can take 6 to 9 months, 3 to 6 months in a new country to launch new products. Um, Finally, I would say that the role of technology, that was the big driver on the lower end of the graph where I showed, or the chart where I showed the ecosystem. Technology is playing a key role across the value chain of products and product launching. So take Shishido as an example. So in this particular case, in collaboration with Accenture, they actually developed AI functionalities which were integrated with their digital platform to develop prototypes. A prototype cleanser. If you look at post-launch monitoring, and this is something, by the way, which Benori does a lot, um, Mondelez actually implemented an AI-powered computer vision system to actually monitor shelf execution in real time in retail stores. All right. So I just wanted to give you a flavor for what is at stake here. Now, if you're going to spend millions to billions of dollars on new product launches and expect only 5% of them to survive, and then you are getting, as a very large legacy player, you are getting hit from the side from nimble startups which focus on one segment of the market and just kill it, then how should you think about it? So how do you remain competitive? How do you create ROI? What do you do about marketing, launches? So this is a good segue for me to hand it over to Priyal, who can talk about what to do with all of this. What are some of the areas that we have looked at for our clients also, and what is required to be done. So with that, over to you, Priyal.
Thank you, Ashish. And good morning, good afternoon, good late evening to people who are joining in. So as Ashish said, he very nicely laid down, the landscape. What I'm going to talk about is now, how do you really transform the product launches? And the key part is the agility and the precision. So be precise about what is being developed, what is the target market, and whether the needs are getting satisfied or not, right? So that's the only way where you can increase that percentage success factor. Now, some of the top questions here, right? In the first stage of need assessment idea generation, obviously we are looking at the early signals, because it's important when the consumers, which are you and I, for example, would start talking about, there is a challenge, for example, with greasiness in a certain sunscreen, for example, or the level of sugar, or fatty acids, and so on and so forth. And people talk about it in a very common man or a common person standpoint, without a lot of technical jargons. But how to track these signals and trends when people talk about it? um, then comes the product development. So obviously the open innovation world has existed for at least 3 to 4 decades now, but still there are gaps, right? So how do I not reinvent the wheel and try to get this learning from the other players? It could be competition, it could be the lateral industry, and learn that better. The third one is in the GTM or the go-to market. What do I really learn from the peers in terms of their innovation, the partner ecosystem? Someone asked that question. We'll come to that on the use of AI and technology and across the value chain, not only on the GTM part, but the across the value chain. Then the product launch, how to create a safety net. Now, this in the product launch, one of the key critical part is you obviously manufacture and produce in a certain country, but you export with all the big MNC. You already also exported to multiple country. So what are the regulatory nuances? What are the regulatory changes one needs to be aware of before they actually get implemented? Because it has a huge impact, especially in the F&B space where the shelf life anyway is very low. and then you need to comply. So how to create that safety net. And finally, when we are doing a post launch, how to look at the consumer's reaction, whether they are liking it or not, whether things are working fine or not. Obviously this has all the elements of how do you then tweak it, to Ashish's point on whether I need to renovate, which is easier and much more efficient in terms of cost, or innovate because something is not working. We'll have to go back to the drawing board. Moving on. So now what I'll walk you through in the next maybe few slides is how we are helping our clients in each of these stages. So these are some of the use cases or impact stories that you can see. So in the first one, need assessment, we break it down as the following. The signal sensing is, what I really say is, find out and catch them young, which is like understand what are the signals coming in, and obviously where do you look at it. Historically, one used to do a lot of surveys. That obviously is time consuming, a lot of resource are needed, and obviously it's going to be a lot more costlier. But there is an alternate way to do it, and here we are talking about more the digital way to do it. Monitor the signals coming through the social media. What are the people saying in terms of the influencers, what are the launches that are happening in particular country or a market, and what is really driving a lot of discussion around it. So that's what we say is signal sensing. It could be, for example, let's say in the energy drink, or it could be something like, for example, on the UV or the effect of pollution, for example. So there could be these, depending upon, as Ashish mentioned, home care, personal care, or FNB. What are the signals that are coming from the consumer. The second one is a market intelligence, where we say understand the consumers and assess what they really want. So it's a consumer preference assessment. Uh, Understand what are the products that are able to satisfy these needs which are coming up, and where does the white space exist. Right now, this is obviously going to be country and region specific, or within that micro market level. But it is important to say the market that I operate in, what are the gaps that exist, and if there are competition playing, then who are there and what is the value proposition. uh, and that's something that segues into the competition monitoring, where we are saying not only what they are launching, but what is how are they doing as a partner ecosystem. What is the research around it, whether it is 20% in house or 40% in house, or what is that level. What is something new a company or competition would be working on. What are the general trends that you can get monitoring a lot of these websites. So you can get a lot of signals and sense these parameters little early on in the value chain. Moving on to the next one, which is product development, and how do we, again, we help. um, Obviously a lot of science and tech we are talking about here, cutting tech and innovation here. So you can capture inputs coming from literature, such as patents. Look at scientific literature, look at clinical trial. uh, you know there is a methodology where you say, okay, these are a set of problems and this is how there are multi solutions to that. Then evaluate the different solutions which are possible, and so on and so forth. The second one is a partner scouting, where you really look at the capability of an existing partner, because I'm sure there are a lot of existing partners, supporting. However, there are new developing partners, most of them flying under the radar. Some of the startups, and also the existing partner. What are they really working on? Something as a cutting edge that can be a potential solution. And in our experience, not always all the time the customers know what their partners are working on, right? So it will be a worthwhile to do a little independent check on what is that new thing coming in. We see a lot of digital play, and I think Ashish already covered some of the use cases in AI and digital across the value chain. But new set of real players, bringing in some very specific use case to solve specific areas where in the development cycle, whether we are talking about need assessment, innovation slash R&D, launch monitoring, and so on. So that's very, very critical area for a product development stage. Then we are talking about contract manufacturing, because depending upon the company, most of the time the contract manufacturing can range between 40-50% to maybe 70-80%. But which are the best contract manufacturer available at what cost, and so on and so forth. Best practice intelligence, again, look at the things which are across the industry, maybe in lateral industry. What are the best practices that are running along? Moving on into the next phase, which is the go-to market and the product launch. Now, interesting use case where we're working for one of the clients where they said, we have products that we manufacture in a country and then we export it to n number of countries. The regulatory changes happen a lot. We just need to create a safety net so that our teams are reinforced with information that something is changing and we are well prepared ahead of time, so that we can plan and strategize. So that helps the sales, function when the product is eventually, shipped, and it can be kind of sold. So this is very, very critical. As I said, it acts as a safety nets and no surprises at the 11th hour. Sales and distribution channel, the second one, where we are talking about, different strategy in terms of what should be the right channel once I had developed the product. How should it be with, general trade versus a modern trade versus a quick commerce, and so on and so forth. What is the right channel to be used? What are people using in terms of, the competition? What are the best practices? What are the learning? So can we get, some insights and help there? Obviously, marketing is extremely key once you have a product launch, but how can the digital communication nowadays, and it's just not about the non-digital part of it, but how does that land? What are the things that have worked for successful products? What are the consumer liking it, for example, on the digital media? That's something that's a very, very critical part. Now moving to the post-launch monitoring, again, a lot of activities happen from our point of view, and how do we support here? Looking at how the brand is performing. Again, there are a lot of these data that you can get from GNPD, Nielsen, etc., etc. What we bring to the table is the white space here, which is look at how the product is performing, how the brand is performing in the digital space. What are people talking about it? Understand, gets the cues from the social media. How things perform, people perceive, do they refer, they like, they dislike, and what does that entire ecosystem of social media listening gives an input. Then we are looking at customer satisfaction, and this again can be a mix of digital and offline, where we can have FGDs or focus group discussion to really understand what is working very, very well for a set of consumer slash customer. And finally, keep an eye on the competition launching similar product or product with different variations, with different benefit area, with different targets, ingredients, the story, the digital communication, so that you can always pivot, you can always learn, and fine tune your renovation story, for example. I think that's some of the use case, Ashish, that we talked about in terms of how we are helping. I think that's pretty much, from our standpoint on how do we, support.
Sure, Priyal. Thank you so much for that. Now, there are a bunch of questions. I don't think we'll be able to answer all of them, but let me at least try to rush through some of these. One interesting question, and overall around regulatory challenges. So the question is, how are FMCG companies addressing the regulatory challenges as the launch cycles are getting reduced? Right. And if I Um, just I mean, Priyal, you can answer this question and link to that.
Yeah.
There's another question. In monitoring regulatory changes in different countries that we do at Benori, is this done only manually or are we using some digital tools as well? So how does the process work? So maybe if you can answer those two.
Yeah, the answer to the second question is straightforward. That nowadays, where we have so many digital slash AI tools, where we look at information getting captured from different sources, and when we are talking about regulation, we are talking about a country, and in some cases region, like an EU, for example, or a GCC in the Middle East, for example, as a region. But there are multi sources, multiple databases which are tracked systematically using all the combinations of words and keywords. That gives us a list of news items or inputs that comes in, which then, because we are talking about regulation, because we are talking about very critical information here, that's then superimposed with a analyst looking at it, maybe of one third, one fourth of such examples, to make sure nothing is getting missed. So that's how we train the tool or the AI engine. And once we have a confidence that it captures at least 98% plus, and then the second part is where the analysis kind of happens. Um, so that's, for example, how we do it, and this depends upon different countries and region. So the sources obviously will vary. Ashish, your second, the first point, if you can just quickly also
It was
remind me on the.
around how are companies addressing the regulatory challenges as the launch cycles are getting reduced, but the regulatory framework and the requirements, compliance requirements still take some time. So what is the optimal way of launching a new product given these constraints of regulations?
Yeah, no, a brilliant question, and I think a little complicated answer to that. In most of the cases where we work with, big companies, they operate in 130, 40, maybe 180 plus, which is pretty much the globe, through either their own channels or through the distributors in very exotic country, for example. Now, I think one of the challenge that we kind of keep hearing from the client is that it is almost impractical to have an analyst or a team which is dedicated to a single country, or a bunch of countries managed by one team member, because it's not scalable, not sustainable. So although that role exists and although the product teams are responsible for it, but here and there the slips happen, the information get missed, and then it creates a lot of pressure on the on eventually when it comes to selling the product, because you don't want to be falling onto the wrong side of the law or the regulation. So generally what company do is have this, and then at least in our experience, they would want to have another safety net where it is a cost effective solution, but just to make sure that nothing is falling through the crack. So that's what we have heard, and that's how the clients have approached us.
Right, excellent. So there's a question from Srini. I'll pick that up. The question is, does all of this apply to a relatively slower, not a fast-moving consumer goods market, but a slow-moving consumer goods market like alcoholic beverages? And especially in India, where there are so many regulations around how do you communicate your brand, how do you market alcoholic beverages? So, Shrini, we actually don't know the answer. We did not do research per se into slower moving consumer products. But my sense is that definitely a lot of this might not directly apply. Because the market, the cycles are longer for product development also maybe, and then for launching and the limitations that you have around marketing and advertising around that. Uh, Having said that, clearly the ready to drink market, and especially on the non-alcoholic side, how that might impinge on your market share. And will that market, because there the launch can be very quick, right? And you can also market that far better and advertise around that. And last year, I think globally there has been a 1% reduction in the total alcohol consumption, because a lot of people, the consumer behavior is moving towards saying that, look, I don't actually want to have alcohol. I mean, that's a dramatic statement, but I want to have lesser alcohol, let's say. So I think the forces at work in your industry might be slightly different, but still some of these dynamics will play out over time, for sure. Um, Priyal, a question for you. This is really around open innovation.
Uh-huh.
And we were discussing in our earlier team meeting whether open innovation might actually be going down in the world given the ease of starting a new company. So if you have a problem out there which is in the public domain, it's a large problem. Can a scientist and an entrepreneur, a business person get together, solve the problem, and launch a product? So, how important is open innovation in today's world in the product launch cycles?
Yeah, I mean, extremely important, right? And I think it should only accelerate. It is very, very critical for the agile or design thinking around agility that companies play to their strength. Now, obviously, it could be innovation, it could be marketing muscle, it could be the presence and the brand recall, for example. But what certainly is absolutely critical is we need to have in the ecosystem of open innovation partners who are bringing that cutting edge, which is basically squeezing the cycle that we are talking about. Whether we are talking about understanding the need of the consumer, whether we are talking about using combinatorial chemistry or the different simulation model to come up with a optimum formulation before you even do anything in the lab, right? And then reduce that combination a lot so that you can save on time, you can save on money, you can save on resources. Similarly, there are digital twins, use cases on manufacturing. So how can you do that even better? There are supply chain and logistics which can be heavily be streamlined and further optimized. So I mean, the opportunity are there in the entire value chain, and it is extremely important. When I look at open AI or open innovation, sorry, I see it more from the entire value chain, just not innovation or just not R&D, because you can innovate, in the entire cycle. So very, very important. I think we should just get horses for courses, find out companies which can help, the FMCG companies in becoming much more better, much more agile.
Right. And this is a nice segue into Sunita's question, and maybe I'll answer that. The question is, how has the failure percentage changed over a period of time, and especially given that AI and digital has grown so much? So, just picking up from where you left, Priyal, given that you can open you can crowdsource innovation to a large extent by open innovation platforms that which exist, or you can create your own platforms for getting in the innovation input from across the world. Second, given that there is so much capital available, and there is a surfeit of capital in the world, which is chasing a limited number of ideas and entrepreneurs. So there is more capital and lesser number of great teams and ideas to fund, which means that a lot of people become desperate as investors and then start investing into ideas which, they follow the portfolio approach. So getting capital to launch a new product is more easily available. Getting the science and the innovation is more easily available. And then to sell is easier through e-commerce websites, through AI and influencing and social media kind of dynamics, which is possible. So my guess is, Sunita, we don't have numbers for this, but my guess is um, a lot of people just launch products because the ecosystem is there and the environment is there and the enabling conditions to launch a product are there. But a lot of those products are not viable. There is no product market fit. And that is why the fatality rate or the the rate at which these products die out most likely would have gone up. But separately, we can do some quick research and come back to you with some insights on that question. Maybe we just have maybe time for another question. Um,
I mean, Ashish, there is one which I can address if it is okay.
sure, sure, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there is a question coming in that possible to add commercial success stories of new launches that are not covered by traditional data providers. Maybe without getting into the names of for whom we are working. But a client would came and said we wanted to understand the trends which are going in the ANZ market and B in the Middle East onto a certain uh, category of the products that they had. And to everyone's surprise, including our client, they said there is a trend which says that people want a certain kind of a product which has certain functionality and certain ingredient. Now it was a trend that became a mini trend becoming a little micro trend. And it was easy for the client because they already had a product in the portfolio. It was just about launching it into that specific market. They were present in that market. It just they did not know that this is something which is picking up. So it helped the client get share of the business. It was not a big deal because it was very easy to just relaunch what they had kind of discontinued or not focused in the last 5 years or so. So so that kind of easily adds up to the top line without spending a lot of money because it's part of the product portfolio anyway. So yeah, that's something that can help. These nuances, these pulses can at times bring in a lot of insights.
And a lot of that has to be done through primary research, right? I mean, those things might not be that easily available on secondary as such.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are actually completely out of time. We just have 30 seconds left. So with that, maybe we can wrap up today's webinar. It was really wonderful to have all of you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining. Hopefully, this was very useful. As you are exiting from the webinar, a small survey or a feedback form would pop up. Please do fill that out. It just makes us improve the webinar and this knowledge series. So thank you so much and have a great day.